Hello world, this is Stefan of Lendergan Games. This past fortnight has been an infuriating obstacle. Work 5 days, get 1 day off, work another 5 days. Ah, the joys of shift scheduling. I slammed out and incorporated the transition animations across a course of 3 days, so this should have been published last week. On that note, I've given my job 2 months to replace me before I leave and look for something with a stable schedule. Thoughts and prayers would be greatly appreciated. That's partly because doing anything more would requiring knowing where I am, and it's partly because putting out applications has previously accomplished less than did sitting on my thumb and praying. And that's everything that has changed. My next steps are still to finish up the night and then redo everything thus far on the Godot engine. This ramble is a response to a year-old Shadiversity video, wherein he pours utter contempt onto the existence of classes within role-playing games. Primarily, he decries their implementation as unrealistic, since, among other reasons, they pigeonhole characters with the logical equivalent of invisible walls. To which I can say only, yeah, they do. Even though I vehemently disagree with his conclusion that classes are stupid, I refuse to fault him for hating them for their unrealism, especially considering his background in historical research, wherein almost all of the rigidly applied titles in games were originally broadly applied within a spectrum of activity. Nonetheless, this is my attempt to pick up his gauntlet and defend the honor of classes within role-playing games. As lightly referenced in the title, the phrase role-playing game is in practice a dichotomy, because the best role-playing takes place within a simulation of reality, and the best games remove aspects of reality for the sake of a distilled experience. The best example for me is the Mount & Blade series. It simulates a lot of elements about an Earth-like place, yes, but at the end of the day, it simulates only so many elements, and ditches the ones that get in the way of the distilled experience. In this case, said experience is the gradual and hard-won accumulation of economic, military, and political power within a medieval-style world. The realistic aspects include the always finite capabilities of the player character, his being weighed down by heavier equipment, the agency of non-player characters, and the ever-shifting profits of owning businesses and land. However, it doesn't include Arabic slave trade, gangrene, the Black Plague, fraudulent coin minting, or peasant weddings, to name a few details of the medieval era that wouldn't have added directly to the targeted experience. Meanwhile, on the other side of balanced design philosophy, I've gotten too many realism arguments in favor of Skyrim. Again, that operates fundamentally on the rule of cool, but also wants to be considered as realistic because of its desire to stand on both sides of the canyon, primarily with declaring classlessness but still granting class-like abilities. The game becomes disparate gimmickry. How is all of that relevant to classes? I won't argue that classes are good for role-playing, but they certainly do wonders for the game. Ironically, classes aid the game portion of role-playing games in the same way that realism would. Both entities provide consistency. In order to be immersed both in role-playing and in games, the player needs a firm grasp of causality within the presented scenarios. What classes do that sheer simulation can't is provide easier and faster access to that firm grasp. Especially in action tabletop gaming, the less spreadsheets through which players need to go, because creating spectrums with definable simulations requires demarcations, the faster he can get to the action. With classes, the necessary information for a player's character is largely condensed into a single space for quick reference, allowing a smooth, brisk pace. However, dramatic tabletop games, such as World of Darkness, can afford to do spreadsheets and separated information because drama is much more able than action to survive a slow pace, sometimes even requiring pause for digestion of a situation. Meanwhile, in video games, the usefulness of classes really depends on the desired tone of the game. Because a computer is crunching the numbers in spreadsheets, action role-playing games, such as Mount & Blade, really can't afford to incorporate a lot more elements of realism than can games with a human behind the curtain. That said, it really is up to the developer how much realism to incorporate. Diablo 2, for example, has no actual role-playing in it, but as a game, it's amazing and its classes serve it well. Furthermore, besides realism, video games have to bear a burden of artistic quality. Classes help in this regard because specific foci help developers create greater peaks of artistic beauty than does an unfocused sandbox, which has so much area to cover that lifting all of the art to mere adequacy is a monumental task. Kingdoms of Amalur has a dearth of character customization because it focused shamelessly on stylization over simulation. More character options, such as weapons and attack styles, would have been nice, yes, but the trade-off is that every option comes with a sizable workload in both artistic creativity and sheer man-hours. Fable's sequels similarly restricted themselves for the sake of art. As their combat animations became flashier and smoother, their weapon pool shrunk. In conclusion, I disagree with the declaration that classes in role-playing games are stupid, because while they restrict the role-playing, they serve well the game.